Everybody, this is me again, Pat Windrow at the Cable Easel with the second part of a program which is a landscape painting at the clock tower in Roslyn, Long Island, over there in Nassau County, not far away. Just a hop and a skip down the Long Island Expressway and then a nice sharp right to the North Shore. It's a charming town. It's a rather interesting building, not an architectural gem, but certainly an interesting building. And it's very well known for everybody around the area, and so that's the one that was picked. I picked this one for its historic value, and also for the fact that it's over there in Nassau County, which is an area which we may be more and more interested in, and going to do a lot more things over in that general direction. So here we have the clock tower. It's a memorial to a lady called Ellen E. Ward, and it's granite, and it stands at the top of a hill in downtown Roslyn, and it is a landmark, I expect. It's being taken care of. You can tell by the layout. We laid it out on the last program and managed to do just about as much as a half an hour would allow. There's going to be a desperate attempt to try and finish this off, and if I don't finish it off, then I will finish it in my studio and then show it to you at the next bunch of programs. But I'm dealing now with the shadow side of this structure. It was, as you can tell by the clock, it was 5 minutes past 1, I think, or just 1 o'clock, and that means that the sun was overhead, and the difference between the shadow side and the sunny side was not that intense, but there was nevertheless a definite division between the two colors. This is a stone tower. I guessed that it was granite. I said that in the last program, and the stone around the windows and the doorway are pink in color, which makes me feel that they are probably which is known as brownstone. It's pink, but it's known as brownstone. So the need to pay attention to things, the forms of things, is how you deal with the shadow side of a building such as this. I'm putting in the stones that catch the light on the corners to give you some idea that this is not a geometric box with a sharp edge to it. All of these things are techniques that ought to be remembered and slightly and observed very closely, so that you can get what is called a painterly quality to an architectural rendering. And this is, after all, an architectural rendering. It is a building of a specific size, specific nature, and for a specific reason, and it is a landmark. Therefore, it should be recognized by anyone who sees it. So that's why one pays attention to its anatomy, as it were, the anatomy of this building. The stonework around the clock is of a different tone. Therefore, as I say, I think that the stone is granite, and the work around the clock is probably brownstone, which I believe comes from Vermont or comes from Upper New York State. Whatever it is, I'm sure that there is a very intense history on the materials used in this building. The building was dedicated in 1895, so in a very short period of time. This is going to be 100 years old, which should certainly qualify it as an antique of sorts. a place for meeting. People will say, meet me in Roslyn, and they say, where, the bell tower or the clock tower? And so, and everybody knows where it is. So that's one of the reasons that I like to pick these particular places. First of all, for the recognition of the people who are going to be the viewers of this thing, but also for the fact that these things, if they're preserved, then good, but an awful lot of them are not. And an awful lot of them, you know, come to the end of their existence, they are torn down and they're never seen again. That kind of a thing has existed all over the country. And so it's always a pleasure to see something like this that is being preserved and that is being maintained. Whoever Ellen E. Ward is, she certainly seems to be commanding some attention. On the other side, the brownstone is a little bit darker because it's in the shadow side, therefore just slightly intense. As you can see, it's a little bit more intense in color, but it is the same Gothic little thing. The introduction of the Gothic arch makes me think that there was maybe a religious architect would probably in on the doing of this, or Ellen E. Ward. Was of a particular faith that would sort of demand putting up a quasi-Gothic kind of arches here. The clock, of course, is on time, and the little the doorway, which is down here, is the one that has the memorial inscription that I told you about on the last show, which is a memorial to Ellen E. Ward, who to whom the people of Roslyn were dear. And then it goes on to say, she fell asleep on January 18th of 18-something. The date of her death has been obliterated by time and where. So we can only assume that the records somewhere in the town of Roslyn has got her actual dates of her dying in the records. So she or when she died. So here are the shadows in the little archways, little details which should be paid attention to, because it first of all tells you that these little archways are recessed, and secondly it tells you kind of what time of day it is. It tells you that it's intense enough to have the shadows directly underneath the arch. Always interesting points to me, because I like to be able to tell more than just a pictorial analysis of a place, but also maybe more, like what time of year it is and what time of day, and whether or not there is any other interesting factors attached to it. On the last program, I noticed that I had what a house painter would call a holiday. It's a blank space where the paint didn't hit, and here the holiday is the sky, and unfortunately I have a little bit of blue that has already been mixed here that I'm going to fill the sky in up here. Oh, not enough blue, where the tower, where the roof line comes down, and I believe that this would be rather fun to watch the sky being put in after it was absent from the original putting in of the sky. If I had put the sky in with a 4-inch house painter's brush, it would have gone all the way across and I never would have missed it. But I didn't do that because I used deliberate strokes for all of my work. It's all, well, that makes it a little bit more understandable. We have then also the business of putting shadows underneath those stones, and I think that when you see the close-ups, which we make an effort to get when out on location, to get the details of these buildings, because when you're there you can focus in on them, but the camera sometimes misses some of the details, and so that the rocks are and the way they protrude are what cause these shadows. And all I'm painting is the shadows, not the rocks. The rocks have already been painted the overall tone. So what I'm giving you is the texture of the building by painting the shadows. And I think that when we step back and we see it, we'll be totally convinced that every one of these rocks has been painted in detail, and that and I haven't painted one single rock. I've merely painted their shadows. Just something that is an observation as a landscape painter of such a long time that I hesitate to even think about it. But nevertheless, these are the things that you find out and learn as you do this. These up here are very pale. I'm sure that the dirtying up of the stone stone has taken place much closer to the road than it is up here in the rarefied air of the tower, which I believe is probably close to, well, I would take an estimated guess that that tower is 75 feet in the air. I think it probably is 75 feet high. But as I say, if anybody who knows this tower can tell the details, by all means, the Cablevision people and I will be extremely happy to hear from you. Then we know that you're paying attention, and we know that you're interested enough to write and tell us. Underneath here there is a rather intense shadow from this little shelf that takes place underneath this window. And then there is a shadow also on the building that it takes place here, and it's a little bit amorphous, and it's a little bit hard to explain to you, but I think that you will see when the close-up is given to us on the monitor, you will see that this is the shadow of a very gung-ho plant that has taken root in the window of this structure here, and where it finds the dirt, we cannot tell, but there is a plant growing, and I was so amused by it that I asked Brian, our young cameraman who came out and shot this scene very well, as a matter of fact, to be sure to get that plant, because it certainly is interesting to see that with there's no pot up there, there's nothing. This plant has taken root, and there it is. It's growing in the window. A wild one for sure, I guess, but it's nevertheless a curiosity. And there you have it. I think that you can see how amusing that is. The sun is hitting a couple of those leaves, and that pale green is very visible. And isn't it wonderful when these things, when you don't invent something and the real stuff comes along, and there it is, the plant in the window, which is not going to be the title of this, but it certainly could pass for the plant in the window. And anybody who sees this is going to say, what in the heck is that? And then maybe it'll still be there when whoever is checking out on me goes and checks it out. While I've got my small brush going, I think the detail of that clock should probably be done. I'm going to use a very, very thin paint here to just give you the illusion of that circle of numbers. It is, I'm not even going to paint the white in there. I'm going to give you the illusion of the circle of numbers and the general position of the needle of the hands. That should tell you enough. The other clock, the clock on the other side is on the shadow side, therefore it's going to have to be lowered in value, made a little bit gray, because it is, after all, in shadow. And these are details which I find always important to tell you about, to look for. When I point them out, people always see them, but it's always important to see them first. Now that is a white clock face, but it's on the shadow side of the building. Oh, there's a little shadow underneath this ledge here, therefore I think I'll put that in, a little shadow underneath the ledge here, which interrupts the clock. And over on the other side, the clock is telling you, once again, that there is a circle of numbers, and it's only going to be an indication with a very slight sketch, a sketchy rendering of it. Oh, it's 125. Okay, let me put that other needle in there. And then here's the other circle. And the hands of the clock are doing the same thing over here. All of these are just incidental details, but quite vital to the identification of any given place. I believe that the very top of this building has got a sort of a turquoise-looking, well, I'm not quite sure of what that very pale green stuff is up there, but it could be some sort of, well, it could be a copper flashing on the top of those little towers that have turned green over a period of time, as copper tends to do. And I'm going to make sure that I mix up pale enough color so that it's seen against the brilliance of that sky. Let's see if I can really pull this off. If it works, then good. If it doesn't, I'll simply go back and mix another one. Well, that's enough for the general feeling of it. And it's over on these also. It's on every one of them. And this can only happen when you're either taking a videotape of it or you're there itself. I must tell you that this technique of going out and shooting a scene with a video camera is available to anybody who has a camcorder. Anybody who wants to can go and do exactly what I'm doing. Take a shot of something, bring it home, project it on their television screen, and work from there. It's a technique which we innovated here at Cablevision, but which is, of course, course, obvious and available to anybody who would like to tap into that kind of a resource or that idea. I'm sure that it's going to be very interesting to the people who do it, and they're going to find out that there's more to doing the videotape than birthday parties and baby's first step. I'm going to take a very short break here, as usual, so that I can kind of study what I've done and come back to you. So whatever you do, don't take long. I'll be right back. Well, here we are for the final and not so exciting conclusion of the study of Roslyn's clock tower. We work in very calm, a little bit calm here. It's not a wild sport thing where you have to make a basket or win a victory. This is a very quiet little business of applying paint to canvas, and hopefully some of it is interesting enough for you to try it yourself. I'm going to always promote the idea that you can go out and do this yourself and use the same techniques that are used here, namely the monitor, if you want to do architectural renderings, maybe even just your own house. I am painting on the sunny side of this tower the shadows of these stones. As you can see, this is not what you would call a rendering just of the stones. It is an important trick to know, not trick, but it's an important piece of information, because a lot of people try to paint stone walls and stone structures and so on, and they have to understand that you don't paint the stones, you paint the shadows that the stones cast. So much for my little information about how to do this. But I think you'll be very happy when you realize that if you've been agonizing over the painting of stones in the past, those days of agony are over. You can do it this way, and I think that when you step back and see this, it will tell you immediately this is a stone building. All right, this is the plaque over here where her inscription lies. I would never attempt to write what it says, but it's the thing that says that this was in memory of Ella E. Ward. It's written right here on this in this area, and it's cut in the stone, and it's barely visible from anywhere but directly below it. So I'll just put an indication that something is written in there. And if you want to go and see it, you're perfectly at liberty to go and study that. There are two projecting brownstone structures that stick out this way, and it's part of the entrance to the building. It's barely visible on what I'm painting here, but nevertheless it is still there. And then there's the rest of this stone arrangement here. So we're working our way to it. Before too much happens, let me see if I can't just give you the illusion that flag is blowing in the breeze, and that has to be done very quickly because it changes continuously. However, we all know that I would would paint merely, at this point, merely the red of the stripes and leave the white for refining in the studio. And the stripes are going to be doing, you see the flag is now sort of at rest, but always remember that when you paint the flag that you should try to get the number of stripes accurate. There is no doubt that the American flag has been painted a number of times with 12 stripes, and by golly, the colonists would not appreciate that. We do in fact have to make sure that there are some things that are not interpreted, but some things that are actually very carefully paid attention to. This is a perfectly ordinary flagpole. I'm using my finger as a resting place for this flagpole. There's a little round ball on the top of the flagpole, all part of the anatomy of this particular place. That flagpole is what it is, and it must be what I see it is. All right, so as I progress along, I'm going to change the brush. I'm going to put the boxwoods in. The boxwoods can be done with a little bit of detail. Some other time they have to just be blocked in now, remembering that the top of them is paler than the bottom because there is an overhead sunlight, and that the top of these bushes will be paler than the lower part because they are catching the sun. They're not very brilliant, but they are nevertheless, they have a form, even though they just look like great round balls at this point. They have to have an understanding of what the form is. So let me show you how that makes some sense. Now the lower part is extremely dark, and that's sap green and a touch of ultramarine blue, and the lower part of those bushes is extremely dark. And I think that you'll agree that that's rather dramatic look for these bushes that are growing here in front of this building. There were some workmen fixing the sidewalk down there when we shot this scene, and I think that you can see them moving about. I think I will not put them in. First of all, there isn't enough room. And if I did put them in, it would be a document that at the time that this was done was when the city of Roslyn was repairing the sidewalks. This is something that I many times like to pay attention to. I was in Venice once doing a scene when they were repairing the Doge's palace, and I painted the scaffold, and by golly, I look at that now and I realize that's right, we were there when they were when Venice was going through an enormous restoration, and I painted that picture with the scaffold. Scaffold's gone now, but it was there when I painted it. And so if those workmen are working there, maybe I'll just stick some of them in. Certainly I won't have the time to do it now because I want to get a little bit more done. But you can see that the drama of these boxwoods is accomplished by putting the light side on to show the tops of them. All part of the technique of doing a landscape painting from life and paying attention to the details that make it what it is. You can tell by the overhead lighting on these bushes that it is in fact the time that the clock says it is, and there's no faking that. And I think that's one of the reasons this is such great fun to do, to show you how this is done. And then hopefully when you've absorbed this, or even if you tape these shows, which an awful lot of people do, they can go back over them, because these lessons do not lower their value in any way, because they are basic and fundamental. So, and these trees, which I believe are called arborvitae, and they are a little bit paler green, and they seem to be an overall tone of green here, quite close to these to the boxwoods, and they seem to have less overhead shadow than the others. They seem to be all just sort of very textured, and I'm just putting I'm going to put a little bit of texture in with the back of my brush, so that you can see that these do, in fact, they're not just cutouts, but they do have a little bit of texture. And anybody who knows arborvitae will maybe have a feeling that that's what these are. They don't have a shadow on their shadowy side, nor a light part on the light side. They seem to be just catching shadows of these multiple branches. And there on the monitor, if you're seeing the monitor now, there is the biggest bus you can imagine. It's the school bus, and it's probably as long as the tower is high. Anyway, and so let me see, there's another rather large green bush back here. I'm just going to sketch it in, because obviously the painting of a bush is hardly as interesting as trying to get the rest of this resolved in a very short period of time that is left. And I want to tell you what the short period of time that is left is. This building over here on the right. It's a little building, and I believe that I recall it to be a government building. It has a pale facade. It's a white building, but because it's in shadow, it seems to be gray. It must be there in order for you to be able to identify this scene as where it is. I always want to make sure that there is an accuracy to these places, because it's not the first time that people will call up and say, I don't recognize that, there's a building missing over there. And so we're putting in the buildings that are all there. This is a very quick rendering of how this building is and what its window is in the front, and the fact that in front of it there is a white sign that occupies this space right here. So you can see that sketching has got to be done very quickly. Somewhere down here there is a lot of dark, shadowy places going on, and the side of this building is pure white in the sunlight. I'm going to pull that right out of the tube. Watch, this is how you can get pure, clean white right out of the tube and put it over here on the side, and one stroke should be enough to tell you the story that is. And over here, there is a part here that is catching the sun as well. Well, with very little time left, I ought to tell you that it's important for you to put the, where's my very small brush? Okay, I'll substitute it. There are some signs over here, directional signs. They show you which way to go, and this is the place that I call the enormous traffic hazard here in Roslyn. These are directional signs that tell you that this is east, and this is the way to whatever it is, Plandome, I don't know. And here's another sign that tells you can go to eastern Long Island, and then there's a couple of other ones. And here's one right in front of this tree, a white sign in front of this tree that tells you another direction. And so all of these things are part of the important anatomy of this picture. Now, I talked about the post here, the phone pole that should be put in as a framing device to frame this whole picture in. And it comes down. It's got a rather multiple arrangement here with all sorts of other things hanging onto it. It's rather shocking to see all these strange-looking devices that are sticking up in the air. But when people need to put up a pole, they're going to go put up a pole because electricity is needed by the population, and this is where the poles go. And so it also gives you a placement in time of when this took place. This took place in the 20th century, when there is a tremendous amount of need for power. And here's another pole coming down here. I'm going to use my brush as a stick to steady my hand, and maybe I won't even try to do this now, but this is where these lines will come, and they should be very subtly done. These connecting things can be done with a little bit more emphasis, but these lines running across here have to be extremely subtly done, and I would hesitate possibly to even do them now. Let me see if I can. They go to this tower and beyond, but and it is a fool's errand to think that I can do this effectively. I will do this in my studio and show you the next time I come, because that's one of the important things. You do not put a great big hawser up there and call it a phone line. It has to be very, very delicately painted to make any sense. Let me see if I can get this one down here. There's one that goes that way. And another one, there's another pole going up here, and those lines go down the hill where the little village, where the village begins to take place. It's called Roslyn Harbor, and these lines are feeding the village. So as I say, they may not be the prettiest things in the world, but they sure are part of our culture, and I see no reason why we have to step back in time and eliminate the wires. So for the most part, this is, what is happening there? So, oh, there's a little tree sort of going back here, so that's nice. I'll put that in. That'll kind of lessen the impact of this phone pole. There is a tree that is sending out its little leaves behind this phone pole, and it's kind of relieving the starkness of that this big dark thing that sticks up in the air. Some lady came by and said, "Well, I hope you don't get the picture of those wires," and she obviously doesn't like them very much. So we will relieve this phone pole by the introduction of what this little tree does back here. Well, here we are. I'll fill this in with some dark. Maybe if there was any time, which of course there isn't, I'll put a few cars in to tell you that this is a very trafficked area, and it's also full of human activity, which is why we all gravitate to these places, because it's fascinating to be part of these things. This is, I hope, fun for you to watch. It was fun for me to do and to talk to you endlessly about these things. And if you have any questions about what I do, write to me here. I'm always glad to get the letters. And here's the end of it. The clock tower in Roslyn was the subject matter for today. Thanks for watching. Do tune in whenever you see the Cable Easel advertised on Cablevision. Bye-bye.